Wednesday night rugby on Off the Ball
with Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland. Visit airsport.ie.
Good afternoon to you and welcome on into the show. Lots to get to over the next little while. We're going to speak about some of the provinces obviously over the weekend. We're going to have some reflections on Munster, I think primarily, touch on Leinster obviously as well. South Africa beat New Zealand. We'll get the lads' thoughts on that I'm sure briefly as well, and a few other little bits and bobs as well. John Mitchell appointed to the England coaching ticket, so we'll talk a little about the dynamic of that appointment and what he will bring to that England setup. Keep your comments coming in. We're going to give you more details on how we'll give you some nice little prizes on that too, so keep those coming in here on the Facebook page or on YouTube or on Twitter or wherever it is that you are watching us today. So you're very welcome on in, and a welcome too to Matt Williams. Good afternoon to you, Matt.
Afternoon, Adrian. Glad to talk to you, mate.
And a very good afternoon to Kieth Wood from, I believe, a nice sort of little corner of Berkshire, Keith, if I'm right?
Yeah, just the corner of Berkshire. I'm in Sunningdale, in the Bobby Jones room. Beautiful. For all you golfing nerds out there. But so a pretty good place. We had a charity day today.
How did it go? How did the golf go, I think, primarily?
Golf's okay. Some very good, some pretty distinctly average. But okay. Not bad, actually.
That's modesty right there, I'm sure. Let's get stuck into some of the rugby. I did say to keep the comments coming in, so we'll give you some details on that in a little bit. Our rugby coverage as well is in association with Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland. We're going to go to the provinces first, lads. I did mention Munster's success at the weekend, 49-13. Keith, I'll come to you first on ripping apart, I suppose, an average enough Ospreys side. They put out a vastly understrength team, obviously. Player management, nothing new to them. 55 players I read today that they used over the course of last season, and nothing new to us either. And I guess there's been a lot of column inches and airtime given over to the debate around the strength of the Pro14 from one week to another. It's probably that ebb and flow of top quality players being involved in the league is just something we're going to have to get used to.
It is. I think the fact that there were so many changes to it shows almost a level of strength within the competition. I think we managed to protect our players an awful lot. September, for the most part, takes that month to get involved, to get used to the new season starting. You know you're going to win some and lose some. None of the competition is lost in the first month of it, but it's trying to get players back in. It's trying to get I think the best use of your resource without flogging it, and I used to consider it a criticism in times past, actually, that showed that because the best 15 weren't out in the field all the time, that was detrimental to the competition. I'm not so sure that I believe that anymore. I actually think it holds up as being a little bit stronger. We get to see some of the next guys that are coming through. It bloods them fairly carefully, and we're not having to wipe the floor with our top players week in, week out for 8 months, 9 months of a year. It can't work that way anymore. And I think if we have a really good academy system, if we get younger guys coming through, I think, to be honest, that's probably where the future lies, instead of just having marquee players only week to week.
Do you see it as one of the things that's used to beat it, Keith, is the comparisons with other leagues, or high-profile leagues around Europe, and the fact that they, as you say, wipe the floor with their best players from week to week? Is it almost a case that those leagues at some point, because we've seen the Welsh obviously follow our lead and other Pro14 nations going the same way, might it almost be a case that some of those other leagues, the Premiership and in France, that they might almost follow that lead rather than the other way around?
It's very hard to call it, really, because of big money concerns that get involved in a whole variety of them. But the players' wages within the UK tend to be going a bit too far. Definitely within France, they're being pushed too high up. When you look at the viability of these as businesses, you know that's not sustainable going forward over a long period of time. It isn't. This is a manner that seems to kind of work out a little bit better. We don't have it right. This isn't right. This becomes a very serious competition. I think after the first Heineken Cup games in the autumn, it suddenly kicks off to becoming full-blooded and continually done. To have a professional game with the level of contact and attrition that rugby has, to have that running from September until May is pretty extraordinary. There has to be troughs in that. There has to be peaks. And I've said this a few times before, but I played 42 games one season playing for Harlequins. I mean, that's ludicrous to think that would happen now, and it just doesn't. I averaged 30, I think it was 35 or 6 games for 5 years on the trot, and that sounds ludicrous now as well. You know, you need to manage the players more. You want to have the best players playing at the top. And we seem to be lucky, I think, in many respects, that the Pro14 is giving us an opportunity to rest players and also to bring some really good young talent through.
Yeah, and I mean, that look is obviously a fairly designed thing as well, Matt, in terms of the centrally contracted systems. Rory O'Connor has done a depth charge, as he calls it here, the Pro14 in the Irish Independent today. It makes interesting reading about the numbers, the sheer numbers of players that some of these teams are using. Dragons topping the list with 61 players used, Leinster 55, Ospreys 55, Glasgow 54, Scarlets 53, Munster a little bit further down at 50, Ulster at 48 and Connacht at 45. Like, is that almost the template, Matt? What's your take on sort of this ongoing debate that at some point we're probably having it over the early course of the season because there's not much else to talk about, but about this ongoing debate in terms of world rugby? What's your take on it?
Well, I think the first part is in the competition that Ireland's dealing with. The teams are owned by the national body, so the main competition is the national team. So it's about getting the best team for Ireland at the key points of the year for the national team. So all this competition focuses behind that. It doesn't do that in France, and it does not do it in England. It actually works against the national team in France and England, just like the English Football Premiership works against the English national team in football. This competition works towards producing excellence at the national level. And we only have to look at the opportunities the last few years, literally few months. You know, Jordan Lama wouldn't be where he is and playing some of that great rugby. Porter at Leinster wouldn't be where he is. Ryan at Leinster wouldn't be where he is doing this sort of stuff, this sort of rugby, if they didn't get their opportunities to show what they had in the league and to develop. A player can't develop in 1 or 2 games. He needs 10 or 12 games to show the selectors what he can do, to feel comfortable in that environment and move forward. We don't have Ireland A games anymore. They're almost, they're a thing of the past. We don't have that second-tier competition, a meaningful competition anymore. And I think that the fact that at this really good competitive level, we can give guys an opportunity and bring them out, and at the same breath, rest our elite players for a few games here and there.
Yeah, I think
that many of these players for Leinster that just came back, they were playing for Ireland only a few weeks ago in June. Now, they needed a good 12-week to 15-week recovery break. They need a holiday, then they need time to train and get their bodies ready again. That's what gives them longevity. That's what let them play into their 30s. And I think there's some short-term whinging without a lot of knowledge of what is going on and the true analysis of the system. If you go to France, you get 3 weeks to 4 weeks holiday, 4 weeks training, and you're back in. They were playing competition in mid-August, and they'll miss the first tests in June in not a World Cup year, the usual year, because they're still playing competition in the top 14. It's ludicrous, and I think in a long season in the north, and it's a much more demanding season in the north than the south, they've got it right. Just about. It's not perfect, and they'll have to look at and make sure they keep the integrity of the competition high. But like Keith said, come December, it's a different competition, and that's the whole point of it. I think it's a really good thing for the players.
Yeah, it's that balance of the integrity, and I'm sure the whinging, as I said, after we get some games out of the way and have something to talk about, will probably dissipate a little bit as well. Speaking of games, mentioned 49-13 down in Cork at the weekend. Keith, Carberry starts, does brilliantly. Peter Manley returns, Tyke Byrne, very impressive. Cleeta back and impressed. So let's just accept that the Ospreys weren't at the races. Your overall impressions of Munster being back and being pretty brilliant?
I think I've a fairly straight view all the time with Munster, partly because some of the depth charts in Munster are a little bit less. You can see it in the numbers that are there. Munster play very well when its top players play. And I think they struggled last week for the fact that they didn't have some of those top guys in there, that they didn't have the shape that they'd like to have on the field for an awful lot of it. And they were met with a team that was playing at 100 miles an hour. This week, they had a lot of big guns back. Their shape just looked better. Players that were Cleeta, who played last year, who was fantastic last year until he got injured, he gave them a sense of pure, unadulterated annoyance at breakdown, which is a great facet to have. And you have your captain back, your leader back, your guy who kind of is the rallying call for Munster. And, Taute coming back, getting to see what a full-strength Munster looks like and what their capacity is. Their capacity is pretty good when you have a full team out on the field. So, look, I thought Ospreys were dire, but I thought Munster were very good. I did like the reaction from the crowd to Joey Carberry. I didn't think that anybody wouldn't want to have him. Nobody doesn't want to have a fine player, But as you well know, and you'll know from all the noises that come back here, there's a fair amount of rivalry between Leinster and Munster, which is brilliant for it. But there was a buzz when he played the other day, and we lost a player in Zebo last year who had a spark that the crowd reacted to. We saw it from one loose kick, somebody trying to find touch and not finding it, and suddenly, bang, he's got the gas, he's got the spark. So, he's a long way to go. He's going to still fight for his position because there's a lot of guys there fighting. But Munster needs spark at different times. But they know that Munster have a pack of forwards who will be hard, nuggety, difficult, awkward, professional. But every now and then you need someone with a key to unlock a backline, and Carberry has that in spades.
Yeah, do you see him, in terms of the style that he brings, and like the break for the try was obviously clearly just a spark of brilliance. Do you see a discernible style change, or the start of a style change in terms of the team trying to play around him?
Well, I would say if Munster get Joey Carberry and decide that they're going to play the way they would play with Ronan O'Gara, I think that would be the waste of a really good player. Carberry's skills are different. They're just different. Rog plays a style and Munster played a style that suited them at that time to win European Cups. Carberry is just different. And if we're going to talk about some of the things that Munster are lacking, they do lack that sort of X-factor type player. So he takes the ball a lot flatter. He is attacking the line. He's looking for it very, very quick. For me, it's quite hard to see whether there's any discernible change in it, because I want to see him with Conor Murray playing at 9 and to see what the two of those two guys could do together, because when you've got a big senior 9 who's able to take a lot of pressure off the 10, all you want is the 10 to make the right choice at the right time, to have a cut, because he has that capacity to have a cut. So what the other players are going to have to do is they're going to realise that sometimes there's a play on, but if our 10 says, I'm having a go, they have to follow him and back him to the hilt, because otherwise there's no point in having him at 10.
Yeah, and it looks like on Murray as well that he might be back in the intermediate too, so we might get to see that hopefully sooner rather than later as well. Matt, your take on it? He looked, Joey Carberry, very comfortable at the weekend. Johan van Graan spoke very well about him afterwards and how he has imposed himself almost on the province. Like, this could be the guy that moves Munster pretty quickly into Heineken Cup finalists and maybe Heineken Cup champions again.
Oh, it's early days, mate. You can't complain. 49-13, they've ticked every single box you could ask them to tick on that night. But we have to remember, no Wyn Jones, no North, no Lydiate, no Brad Davis, no Scott Williams, no Justin Teperick in the opposition. It was a very weakened side. But you can only play who the opposition put out. I think the point as we move forward, if we come back to Woody's point a few weeks ago, it's September. Let's not make too many judgments, good or evil, in September. But the way he plays, as Keith alluded to, with a lot of flatness, putting pressure on the defence, Munster need to adjust that system of attack around him to maximise it. That's going to be the key to them, as you say, Ado, making the semis and then kicking on, making a real handful of this year or not. Plus, in my opinion, they're away form. Like Keith mentioned, when they're at home and they've got their big guns out, they're formidable. Down in Limerick, they're formidable. On the road, there's the question marks for me. But there were some great signs there. absolutely great signs.
Yeah, talk to us about some of those signs, Matt. We've just been, I know we had to drop you off there and we've re-established the line sounds great, which is great. Just keep talking about, there's no point in putting Joy Carberry in there and expecting him to play a Ronan O'Gara type game. They've got to adapt to what they have almost. So yeah, just in terms of some of those signs and the game plan from Munster from here on out, with a guy like him at 10 and a guy like Tyke Byrne that I want to touch on as well, who had such a good game again at the weekend.
Yeah, well, again, without being too technical and on radio, it's the fact that Carberry can accept the ball very, very flat. What that does is the old game line theory from back in the 1920s with the Waratahs, and it still holds today. The counterintuitive thought: the closer you accept the ball, you take the ball to the defensive line, the more pressure you put the defensive line under. Now, in the modern game, with the way the fences are, if he's got people around him in motion, so he's got options at his front and options out the back with runners there, especially, it's going to come down to who do they play at fullback. Is Conway going to be the man? You know, who's going to get that 15 jersey? Because the link off him to flat runners, either forwards being flat or getting out the back, and then allowing that ball to get wide to his centres and, you know, perhaps sweeten them on the wing. That system and how they put it together is the key to their attack. Now, I don't expect it to be perfect yet. I mean, Carberry's only had his first run-on game, but I just thought there were some good signs. They're getting to know each other. They're getting to understand how Carberry plays, and Carberry will be getting more confident and more demanding as he gets through, and that's what 10s have to do. Forwards love 9s and 10s that tell them what to do. That they're dominant people on the field. They're quarterbacking the game, as the Americans say. They're saying what they want when they want it. I thought in the first few games that link wasn't there. There was a bit of a disjoint, and that's to be understood. And we're not going to see the best of this until the new year. But I thought that the green shoots of Carberry coming in, and I thought the way he was brought in, the timing of giving him a few games off the bench, and then this is the time for him to start at home in front of a good crowd, a very special day down there in Cork. I thought the whole thing looked really, really, really positive. Again, early days, but mate, you know, you've got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, without drawing any massive conclusions, accepting that. Yes. Keith, I mean, I've sort of been interested over the last few months since Joy Carberry's gone down there, listening to a lot of Munster people talking about the battle between the 4 number 10s for that number 10 shirt. But this guy is the number 1 now, right?
Well, I think, you know, in my mind, he is. I think I think Munster are fortunate in many respects to have some of the guys that they have in there. But in the last couple of years, the only one who really put down, you know, really, or put his hand up to say, I need to be picked all the time, was Tyler Blandale. And he had a decent run and then got injured. I thought Ian Keatley had struggled somewhat and then had put in an incredible season, really, on the back of a guy who had kind of lost his mojo. Put in an incredible season of rugby to try and get there. Like, the point for Munster isn't for these matches at this time of the year. It's for the big, heavy, pressurised games. And for that, you need a certain type of animal. And it's not to say that the others don't have it, but it is to say that Joey Carberry does have it, because on his first day, he steps off a bench against the All Blacks and does a lot of stuff that was... He had a few things to do. He did them all well. He was 21 years of age. It's a bit of a shock to anybody's system. So he has been able to deal at the white-hot level. Can he grow into that level? Can the other guys say, well, if he can do it, I can do it? That's why you don't give up on the idea of just saying, well, he's got the 10 jersey now, that's the end of it. Everybody else has to fight and raise their game. And if they don't raise their game, I don't think they get there. So, of course it is. And the right noises that are coming out are that there's 4 guys there, and that's entirely correct from a squad perspective. We're watching from the outside. We say your man has got a bit of something special about him. But one of the criticisms you have on Joey Carberry, and criticism is the wrong word, is that he doesn't really have a huge amount of experience of playing at 10. But he's only ever going to get that experience if you pick him at 10. So let's not go and have a conversation to say that, yeah, he gets manoeuvred down to Munster. We need him for Ireland to be playing 10 all the time. So if something happens to Johnny, that we have a 10 that's got a bit of a spark and has the mentality to be able to deal with it. we can't really then go in a situation and not pick him at 10. You know, he has to grow. He's going to get it. You know, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to have off days. He's going to miss kicks at goal. He's going to do a whole variety of things that are kind of not up to scratch. But that then brings me back to what we said at the very start of the Pro14. This is the right place to start learning your trade. Learn it here, get it right here, go up to the white hot days, and then make certain that those white hot days are the norm for you, that you're able to bring that level all the time. You can only do that by backing it up week on, week on.
Anybody for anything else on Munster? Like there was a lot of too many players almost that performed so well to comment on, but I don't know if anybody has any final thoughts before we move on to that.
Oh, it's just nice to see Byrne finally there in the red jersey playing so well. I thought he, sort of watching him over the last few years, you keep saying this kid needs to be back on the island playing in the system. And it's taken a while, but I thought he had a very good game. Very good to see Peter O'Mahony coming back. You know, it was just a solid game. Again, against a very weakened team, but you can only play who they put out. But a very, very solid start for a home game in Cork. It was good to see.
Matt, pick up on Leinster for me, will you? Blitz the Dragons, Sexton back, Carney back, James Ryan back as well. Pick up wherever you want really on this one. It was I don't know again what sort of conclusions we can draw from it, but your overall opinions on it. Yeah,
well, it's almost identical, isn't it? You know, the Dragons are poor. Let's be honest here. The Dragons are poor. I feel for Bernard Jackman. I bumped into him there when Keith and I were at the Champions Cup final down in Spain there, and I said to him, "You're going to be given enough time, mate." And he sort of shrugged his shoulders and looked at me. But you know, there's so much rebuilding to be done. You look at their names, there's no one. You know, there you got Ross Moriarty's come back in, but they're poor, and Leinster are fantastic. You know, they're the guys. You look at the names that came back in last weekend, and you know, you still got Furlong and Joe Tomoni on the bench. You know, like it's a really, really good side. And again, they get the blood, a young guy like Hugh O'Sullivan, you know, straight out of the academy. Again, Leinster are the bar at the moment in Europe, not just in Ireland, in Europe. And they could they could put together 2 or 3 or 4 seasons of real dominance with the team they've got, and how they can mix it and how much depth they have. What do you make of that first game? Pretty much exactly what we said about Munster. First day of the office against a very weak opposition, but they did everything that they were required to do, and they looked good. They looked really good, as if they hadn't had a break over summer. In that, the continuity of the way they play, the style they play, the exact nature of their passing, of their breakdown work, of their understanding of how they want to play the game in what parts of the field is top shelf, absolutely top shelf. You've got to be looking at teams such as the Canterbury Crusaders to find something on par with it. Doesn't mean they're not going to lose a game, doesn't mean they're not capable of being beaten or they won't win the comp. But, mate, they're just a joy to watch, and they're a fantastic team. But, again, it's still very early days. A couple of injuries might throw that round, but the depth there is the key to Leinster. They can rest players and move players and still have, especially at positions that other clubs haven't, like tight head prop. You know, to have the depth they have in that one position is not an accident. They've worked at it, but it is quite extraordinary.
Few topics I want to get to, and I'm going to come to you first in this, Keith. We've had some comments in as well. I'll go to these in no particular order. And a reminder as well that if you are watching on Facebook or you're on YouTube, you're on Twitter, make sure that you get yourself involved with the conversation in the comment section below. Across the season, the best comments will be winning prizes with thanks to Heineken. And this week, we've a rugby ball signed by some Irish legends, including that man on your screen there, that one over there, as well as Alan Quinlan, Brian O'Driscoll, and plenty more as well besides. So that'll be winging its way out to you for the best comment of the week. I'm going to jump right in here with some of these on YouTube. Keith, we've Chris Mack, who wonders if the lads think that John Cooney could be pushing for the backup to Conor Murray. His performances since his move to Ulster have been outstanding.
I can't think for any reason why not, actually. He's had a few travels to get where he's got to now. I think having the opportunity to goal kick and be as much of a clinch kicker as he is, has helped him build his confidence. And he plays like a French scrum half. He doesn't play as our traditional scrum half. He plays like the Petit General. And I just think he's been playing well. I think he has a team who appreciates him heavily. And I wonder in many cases whether he could have got that run had it not been for the fact that Ruan Pienaar was got rid of, and that he had already had a period of there at goal kicking 9, whether that would be the case or not. I think he's playing incredibly well. I do think that we have, it's been a while before we've been able to get a player to sit behind Conor Murray, and I do think we have 3 guys that go in there now, which is pretty cool, which we hadn't had before. So yeah, I don't know whether he's top of the tree yet, because for all the caveats we've put in relation to talking about Pro14 in September, guys are finding their way, guys haven't played, guys, the top guys haven't fully been back yet. It takes a couple of games for them to get back fully up to speed as well, just as the nature of it. You're not exactly comparing apples with apples.
Yeah, and Chris Mack is in the mix for that Heineken Star Comment of the Week. We'll come to that a little bit later on. We have another one on the New Zealand defeat, which is a rare thing in itself to be able to say, and we'll come to that on Matt in just a minute. But I know, Keith, you have to go, so I do want to ask you about John Mitchell's appointment to the England backroom staff. He comes in as defence coach, so I'm sure people are aware, former All Blacks USA coach, agreed a 200 grand compensation package with the Blue Bulls, who wanted $500,000. Second choice to Andy Farrell, as we know. England obviously having lost 5 of the last 6. He starts on Sunday. He's never been a defence coach before, Keith. Is he the man to fix this thing for England?
It's hard. That's a very hard one. I know John very well. He was my number 8 in my first ever senior game of rugby when I was 18 years of age, a long time ago. He was my number 8 for Gary Owen. He was forwards coach with Ireland for a time in the late 90s as well. He is a tough disciplinarian, difficult enough guy, great rugby guy, hard as hard. He's had some grief, I think, over the last number of years in terms of his how he treats the players, and because he is hard, he's a disciplinarian. Yeah. But I actually think he's a decent number 2, and I think he could do something pretty well. I also think he'd fight with his head coach. And
I was just going to ask, because we from an Irish football context, we have all this going on, obviously, with 2, it seems, similar-ish kind of personalities. How will that work?
Well, I actually think he could fit in well fighting with his head coach, because if there's only one voice all the time, and it's gone a bit bleak for England in the last 6 or 8 months. You know, England aren't bad overnight, but they've lost their way a little bit, and some of their coaches have gone. It's very difficult. It's a year and a bit out from a World Cup. Some change had to happen. They were in a huge rush to get it done before this week. They wanted to have it for there's a training week that England are having. They wanted to make certain that they had their man in. Look, I don't know. I think most of the guys know how to defend. It's just about putting a bit of discipline on it and trying to grow an awful lot more from it. The standout guy is Andy Farrell, and he has been consistently. But Eddie Jones sacked him a couple of years ago, so he was gone out of. Once he came in, the rest went out. So I don't know. I think he was left kind of grasping at straws for a while. It's a big amount of money to pay out from a year out. It's £500,000 apparently is what the whole package is.
Right, is it?
Right. You know, so that's a huge amount of money. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what the rumour is. It's a really big job for Mitchell, but Mitchell is a real rugby guy. So I think he'll be able to get his head around A, being a backs coach or a defence coach, B, being around number 2, and I think he can be of a good use. But it seems it's a big appointment for a guy, and it doesn't seem as if they're finished yet. You know, they have a couple of consultants in working with them. It still doesn't look like their ship is correct yet.
Right.
So I think England are under pressure. I think Jones is under huge pressure. He's a very difficult autumn coming up. I don't know that I'd see England get rid of him before a World Cup, but I know that they have a high level of expectation, as we have over here. We expect to win a lot of matches, and they've lost. Have they lost 5 out of the last 6?
5 out of 6, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like that as a number is a horrible number for a team like England. So look, there's huge pressure. He's gone for a big guy. Mitchell will stand with him, but it's the times when there's nobody else there, whether he's standing against him, might be the good thing for England.
Yeah. All right. Well, Keith, thanks a million for the minute. At beautiful Royal Sunningdale. Enjoy whatever the evening holds ahead. Thanks a lot for joining us as always on Wednesday Night Rugby. Matt is staying with us for the next few minutes. Matt, your thoughts on that? Like, it's an interesting appointment, and I know that Eddie Jones himself has spoken before about whoever he was going to bring in as that number 2 was going to be the guy that ultimately succeeded him. Your thoughts on the John Mitchell appointment?
That's what I felt it was. I felt it was an appointment for succession rather than to be a defence coach. I mean, Johnny Mitchell has been, what hasn't he done? He's done New Zealand, done USA, he's done the Western Force, he's been through South Africa on a number of occasions. John's got an incredible library of experience, and I don't know him as well as Keith, but I've met him a number of times. He's a great bloke, really good guy, but I can't see him being a number 2. He's a dominant personality, and that'll be an interesting one. But if they brought him in to get a year under his belt before Eddie moves on, well, I think that's a smart move. And if it is putting him in a position as a defence coach, which he could do on his ear asleep at night, then it's okay. Eddie is, you'll never outwork Eddie Jones. He is a workaholic. I've never met or seen a person put in more hours than Eddie Jones. And that's in a business where you've got to put in a lot of hours. Eddie's incredible. That's why he had a stroke a few years ago. He worked himself into ill health. But he's also a very difficult guy to talk around to another way, another point of view. So how that relationship pans out through the World Cup will be fascinating to watch. Yeah. It'll be fascinating to watch. It certainly wasn't something I was expecting. It wasn't the person I was expecting to get it. But he's a great bloke, and it'll be interesting. Yeah,
it's a bit left field. The one stat that jumped out at me was for the defence coach, and appreciating that maybe that's not the grand plan, but for the defence coach, that his Blue Bulls side in the Super Rugby had conceded more tries than all bar one team in the competition. But there we go. We'll see how it pans out. A couple of other quick things I want to get your thoughts on, Matt, before we wrap. Leicester obviously have been a big talking point this week, and I'm sure people are aware. Second row Will Spencer red carded for a high tackle on the Wasps hooker Tommy Taylor over the weekend, and Geordan Murphy's comments afterwards probably only inflame matters, actually, as it turned out. He's the interim head coach at the Tigers at the minute, and he's caught plenty of flack off the back of those comments too. Now, he has since sort of rolled back slightly on that this afternoon in terms of the severity of the tackle and that kind of thing. Spencer last night banned for 4 weeks. The panel, we understand, deliberated for 5 hours before coming to their verdict here, and we don't quite have 5 hours. I know we touched on this rough area last week, but the responsibility, and Joordan Murphy's obviously feeling it this week, Matt, the responsibility on, whatever about the responsibility on the pitch, I think everybody understands that. We need to work to a point where we can put some regulations and laws in place to deal with that. The responsibility of those who work around the game to use the right language to speak about it is just as crucial.
Yeah, Geordie, welcome to being a head coach. I'm sure if he had his time again, Geordie wouldn't have said that. Or those of us of that generation, as in I coached that generation of players, Joordan Murphy is just a delightful man, and he's in his first few weeks as a head coach, he's been at a club for many, many years that he loves, and he was frustrated, and he said something that he obviously regrets, and is without coming out and saying something very derogatory, it was just the wrong thing to say, and I'm sure Joordan sees that. That was what pressure does to you when you lose a game. You're in the heat of battle and you're disappointed. It was a red card. I've seen it, and he should have been suspended. There's no grey areas there, but I'm sure it's not the right thing. And yes, we all have a responsibility to say what's right and what's wrong, and to keep the game as positive as we can. And I think the laws to bring in about where we should tackle and what we should do are very, very fair. And I think it's correct. The interesting part when we talk about defensive coaches, coaches coming from rugby league want to hit the ball carrier around the rib cage. Now, that's a very safe area. That's where you're very strong. You got the big muscles of your chest, and you got ribs there. That's really good. And it's a safe area for both the tackler and the ball carrier. When you come down lower around the knees, you've got a moving knee, and I often say, we've got to lift the area when we teach kids. We don't want to get the kids coming in around the knee because the knees move. But the problem is, if you get it wrong when you're attacking around the chest, if you're out by just a few centimetres, you can clip a guy on the chin. And that's when you're a big 6'6" guy like the second rowers are, and the second row that was sent off. That's the problem. So it's about technique and where you're going to come into this, and there has to change. Yeah. It has to change within the game. But look, for sure, was Geordie wrong? Yeah. Is he a great person? He is. He's a lovely guy. He's a great, and I think he's going to be a fine young coach. And he's just had his first big lesson in dealing with the media. You can't say what you really feel sometimes.
Listen, you know what we're like, Matt. You know what we're like. The one topic that I know you won't want to have touched on before we wrap up here, I say with a sort of large tongue in cheek. New Zealand's defeat at the weekend. We've had a few comments on it. I'll go with this one on our Instagram rugby page from Mansfield 1997, who's wondering if Keith and Matt think that this will affect the mindset of the Kiwis if they're in a situation like we were against France in the Six Nations. Will they continue to back their attack, or will they trust their kicker like we did with Johnny against France?
Can I say, I wish we were as close to the goalpost when Johnny took his drop at goal.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
The Kiwis were. Johnny was 45 out. I think it was a 43-metre kick. Yeah. Theirs would have been a 15-metre kick. Look, I think we have to. It was a wonderful one. It was just a fantastic game of rugby to watch. It was everyone that says. I know Gus Pischer came out during the week and said some things negative about rugby. That was just a belter of a game. It had everything. It was so dramatic and so glorious to watch, and the skill level of both teams was just incredible. But we have to remember, Barrett missed a shed load of conversions. They scored more tries than the opposition. Should they have taken a drop goal at the end? Yeah. But, I mean, Steve Hansen has only lost, I think it's 7 games out of the 80-odd that he's coached. You know, this is just truly one of the greatest sporting teams in the history of rugby and across many, many other sports. The New Zealanders are phenomenal. I don't think it's going to affect too much. I think they'll keep playing the way they do. I think they'll learn from it. Should they have taken a drop goal? Yes. But in that last play when the South African defender hits McKenzie just as he's about to pass, if McKenzie gets that pass away, it's a try. Yeah. And that's what they back themselves. That's why they win. New Zealand wins so many games in those last 2 or 3 minutes. They've beaten both Australia and Ireland in the last 4 or 5 years in the last seconds in games where you just thought they're beaten, they're finally beaten, and they're not. They're extraordinary the way they do it. I don't think it'll change too much. No. But it brought out the best in South Africa. Australia beat South Africa the week before, and you thought, well, I said on the show last week that Rassie Erasmus was a great coach, but he's going to lose against New Zealand. Well, how wrong was I? They were simply magnificent.
Yeah, I think we were all in that camp.
Great for rugby. Great for rugby.
Yeah. Matt, pleasure as always. Thanks a million.
Hey, I'd love to talk to you, mate.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Matt Williams, and much more from him over the coming weeks as well. That's almost it from Wednesday Night Rugby. Our rugby coverage is, of course, in association with Air Sport, who are the home of rugby in Ireland. A quick look at some of the fixtures that you can catch on Air Sport over the coming days. You're going to have the Blues up against Munster. That is on Friday night. 7:35 kickoff there on Air Sport 1 on the same channel. The following day, at the same time, it's Leinster up against Edinburgh. That is Wednesday Night Rugby. That's it from us for the minute. Good luck.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball
with Air Sport. Watch every Munster and Leinster game only on the Air Sport pack. Visit airsport.ie.